As our story begins, we meet Kelvin Celsius, a boy who was accidentally killed by God in his previous life and has been reincarnated into a new one by the goddess of reincarnation. Kelvin wakes up in the middle of a forest and struggles to remember how he got there, soon realizing that he has no memories of his previous life. Suddenly, a pop-up menu appears and reveals that it is the goddess of reincarnation, Melfina, and that in exchange for his memories Kelvin had chosen to become an S-rank summoner with Melfina as his first familiar. Finally, a smart main character. Hearing this, Kelvin decides that he doesn't want to take his second chance at life for granted, so he asks Melfina where the nearest town is so that he can register to become an adventurer. And Melfina tells him that the nearest town with an adventurer's guild is Parth, and the two head straight there. A short while later, Kelvin arrives in Parth, and while looking for the guild he asks Melfina if he can summon her as she is his familiar, but Melfina informs him that he is too weak to summon her. The two continue searching and eventually find the guild where Kelvin successfully registers as an F-rank adventurer and chooses to hunt blue slimes as his first quest before going to a shop to buy equipment. Equipped with a wooden rod, Kelvin heads to the forest to find the slimes. They manage to find a group of slimes, but before Kelvin can attack, Melfina suggests that he use his S-rank skill Appraising Eye, which allows him to see the stats of anyone up to 100 levels above him. Kelvin uses the skill and finds that the slimes are all level 1, so he decides to try and tame one. Kelvin tries to weaken one without using magic, but he misses and the slime counters, knocking him to the ground. After a while, Kelvin successfully manages to land a hit on one, making it weak enough for him to form a contract with it. Kelvin names his new slime Clotho, which unlocks his ability, Servant Network, which gives the slime a personality and allows Kelvin to communicate with it. Together with Clotho, Kelvin earns enough gold for a room at the inn, so they decide to call it a day and head back to Parth. On the way, Kelvin encounters a slave trader showcasing half-blooded elves for sale. This saddens him because he had hoped this world would be less cruel than his previous one. The following day, Kelvin returns to the forest and continues slaying monsters, leveling up and learning new skills, which eventually leads to Clotho evolving into a gigantic slime. After a week, Kelvin discovers that he has been promoted to E rank. However, Kelvin is concerned about taking on higher-ranked missions alone, so the guild receptionist suggests that Kelvin upgrade his equipment and join a party before trying to reach the next rank. Kelvin accepts the advice and is about to leave when a D-rank adventurer named Cashel approaches and invites him to join his party and help them with their quest to kill the Black Ghost Knight. Kelvin is suspicious of the offer and decides to use his Appraising Eye on Cashel, and learns that Cashel has a murderer title. So Kelvin declines Cashel's invitation but proposes a friendly competition to see who can defeat the Black Ghost Knight first. Cashel reluctantly agrees to the challenge before storming out of the guild. Outside the guild, Cashel meets with his two shady party members, Gimmel and Raj. Gimmel informs Cashel about Kelvin's stats and skills as a summoner, and Cashel decides they should murder Kelvin. That escalated quickly. Inside the Black Ghost's castle, Cashel's group arrives to find Kelvin waiting for them. Kelvin reveals that he knows about Cashel's murderer title and a fight breaks out. Kelvin uses his magic to trap Raj and Clotho stops Gimmel, who is trying to flee. Kelvin and Clotho easily manage to take out the trash and learn that Cashel's party hunts new players for experience, which is illegal, so Kelvin ties them up to turn them in later for a reward. Kelvin then goes to find the Black Ghost Knight, Gerard, with the intent to recruit him as a familiar. But Gerard refuses to join him until Kelvin can prove he is a great warrior. The two begin to exchange blows and Kelvin manages to gain the upper hand, but Gerard refuses to give up, remembering his tragic past and the fall of the kingdom he served. Energized with these memories, Gerard charges at Kelvin, but Kelvin manages to bind him with his magic as Clotho fires a beam attack, defeating the knight. The following day, Kelvin successfully turns in the quest and Cashel's party, who are sent to jail for their crimes. The guild decides to celebrate Kelvin's victory, and Kelvin is informed that he will be receiving a promotion to D rank from the guild master. Kelvin goes to meet the guild master, Leo, to get his promotion. Upon meeting, Leo uses his own Appraising Eye to see Kelvin's stats and is surprised to see that he is an S-rank summoner. During their discussion, Leo questions Kelvin about his identity as a summoner, and Kelvin is forced to admit the truth but asks why Leo used him to catch Cashel instead of catching him himself, as he must have known Cashel was a murderer. Leo confesses that he knew about Cashel's murderer title but reveals that he couldn't act because Cashel is a noble from the nation of Trison, and without solid evidence tensions would arise from arresting him. Leo gets to the real point of their meeting and expresses his desire to become friends with Kelvin, mentioning his previous encounters with reincarnations, like the heroes of the Holy Empire Duramis, whom Melfina had also reincarnated. Leo explains that the priestess of Duramis foretold the revival of the demon lord, and he believes Kelvin can protect the town in the absence of the heroes. Kelvin agrees to Leo's offer and Leo promotes Kelvin all the way up to B rank. Later, while eating lunch in his room, Kelvin wants to learn more about the heroes of Duramis from Melfina, and she tells him that they are a group of 4 heroes who were chosen based on their good looks. With this information, Kelvin decides he needs more attractive party members, so he retrieves his reward money from Clotho, who he has been using as storage, and sets off to the alleyway to buy a slave that he can train to be a rear guard. In the alleyway, Kelvin recognizes the half-elf he encountered before. The slave trader reveals that nobody wants to buy her due to a curse that burns anyone who touches her. Kelvin appraises her and sees she has been cursed by the Fire Dragon King. Melfina informs Kelvin that the curse can only be broken by rank a white magic spell called Sacred Bless. Kelvin leaves but returns later to purchase the half-elf named Ethel. On their way back to the inn, Kelvin reveals that he had learned the rank a spell and casts the Sacred Bless spell to break the curse on Ethel, who begins to cry with gratitude. At the inn, Claire dresses Ethel in a maid's outfit, and they all have dinner together. In Kelvin's room, he confesses all his secrets to Ethel, and allows her to allocate her skill points as she chooses. The only issue is that there is only one bed, so they will have to share, which causes Kelvin to panic and have a sleepless night. A month goes by and the party heads out on an adventure to the dark purple forest, where they defeat numerous monsters, and it is revealed that Ethel has become a powerful archer. Later at the guild, Kelvin reports to Ange, the guild receptionist, that his party had successfully completed their quest to kill the wicked sage tree. Ange congratulates them and informs them that one more successful quest will allow Kelvin to take the rank up exam to become rank A, and Ethel to become rank B. Ange then invites Ethel to a new dessert store the next day, and Ethel asks Kelvin if he can come too. This sounds like the start of a harem. Later, Kelvin meets Ange outside by a fountain, and they are joined by Ethel, who is dressed beautifully thanks to Ange's insistence. They head to the shop and buy some desserts before sitting at a table to enjoy them. Ethel playfully tries to feed Kelvin some cake, which makes him embarrassed. Ange gets jealous and joins in as well, making him even more embarrassed. Suddenly, Tabura, the 3rd prince of Trison, and his guards appear, and Tabura shows an interest in Ethel, asking her to join his harem. Kelvin gets annoyed by this and deals with the guards using his spells and confronts Tabura, who reveals he is looking for the summoner of Parth to help him. Kelvin reveals he is the summoner he has been looking for, but he refuses to help and demands Tabura get out of his sight. What a Chad. Meanwhile, at the great temple in the Holy Empire of Duramis, the priestess, Colette, prays to Melfina and receives a message instructing the heroes of Duramis to exterminate the evil in the western continent and to stay away from Parth. Back at the inn, Ethel thanks Kelvin for freeing her and helping her to become stronger. Ethel then goes on to confess her love for Kelvin. Kelvin thinks about kissing her but ends up resisting his desires, and they go to sleep. The next day, Kelvin reviews the stats of the hero party with Melfina, Gerard, Clotho, and Ethel, and they realize the heroes' levels are much lower than expected. Gerard and Ethel then give Kelvin the items they crafted him, and Claire comes to inform them that the guild master wants to speak with him. In the guild master's room, Leo informs Kelvin about a D-rank dungeon called the Hermit's Cave, where a powerful demon has been discovered, and Kelvin accepts the quest to kill it. Kelvin heads to the Hermit's Cave dungeon, where they encounter a demon girl in chains. Suddenly another demon, Archdemon Victor, appears and reveals the girl to be the demon lord's daughter. Victor goes on to tell Kelvin about his plan to absorb his power and use it to break the chains so he can absorb the girl's power, allowing him to become the next demon lord. Victor then charges at them, but he is blocked by Gerard, so he tries summoning skeletons, but Kelvin and his party manage to defeat them. Gerard then manages to cut off one of Victor's arms while Ethel shoots the other. Despite their efforts, Victor proves to be a strong opponent and he transforms into his final form. After some more fighting, Kelvin's party manages to deal significant damage to Victor with a combined attack, defeating him. As Victor lies defeated, he reveals his past as the girl's caretaker. In a flashback, Victor's role as Syrah's protector is revealed, and we see the demon lord seal Syrah away for her safety and task Victor with protecting her until an era of peace where she could become the next demon lord. However, with his defeat, he asks Kelvin's party to take Sira with them so she could see the world, and Kelvin agrees. After breaking the seal on Sira, she awakens and expresses her anger and sorrow over Victor and her father's actions. Outside the dungeon, the party tells the other adventurers, who had come to help, of their success and explain that the girl they were carrying was possessed by the demon. However, it was just Sira using a magical hairpin to conceal her wings and horns. Kelvin then evolves Gerard into an Abyssal Knight Commander, and the party takes Sira to Parth to show her around. Later, Kelvin reports to the Adventurers Guild about their achievement, leading to his promotion to rank A, and Kelvin formally tames Sira as one of his familiars and gives her some of the weapons he and Ethel created with their S-rank blacksmithing and sewing skills. The next day, while traveling on a wagon towards Toraj, the group faces off against the Black Wind Gang, a notorious group of bandits, and Sira displays her incredible strength, easily defeating the bandits despite being outnumbered. They capture the bandits and learn of their mysterious high-level boss. The party arrives in Toraj and Sira expresses her desire to learn how to swim, asking Kelvin to teach her. Kelvin agrees but tells her they must go to the guild first. The group then visits the Adventurers Guild and turn in the captured bandits before meeting with the guild master, Mist, who had been part of the same party as Leo in the past. Kelvin informs Mist about the situation with the Black Wind Gang, telling her their boss was Trison's famous adventurer Kristoff. Mist then tasks Kelvin with finding the bandits and capturing them. A while later, the heroes of Daramis arrive in Toraj and learn about the bandits' situation. They want to help the people in need, so they go to Mist for more information, but Mist urges them to stick to the mission Melfina had given them. At the bandits' base, Kelvin's party arrives just in time to stop a bandit from torturing the slaves. The party then continues through the base trying to find Kristoff and the rest of his gang. When the heroes of Daramis arrive, they encounter Clotho, who is there to protect the slaves. After talking to the slaves, they head off to find Kelvin's party, who they think are in danger, but instead find Kristoff's gang unconscious and Kelvin's party pretending to be the bandits. The heroes confront Kelvin's group, believing them to be the Black Wind Gang. Kelvin plays along with the accusation and proposes a game where he would fight all of them at once, and the loser would be forced to obey the winner. Toya insists on fighting Kelvin alone, but Setsuna convinces him to face Kelvin with the support of the team. The heroes take a moment to strategize, and it is revealed that Kelvin's plan is to have the heroes testify against Kristoff and his gang. But Kelvin also wants to use this opportunity to improve his ability to fight against groups and test his new skill Eater gloves, which he had created from Victor's armor. The fight begins, and the heroes use their blessings to boost their attack. Toya attacks Kelvin up close, but Kelvin manages to hold him off. Kelvin then hits and steals Miyabi's skill, parallel processing. Toya becomes enraged seeing his party member hurt and begins to attack more aggressively, abandoning their strategy. Kelvin takes advantage of this, casting spells and using borrowed skills to counter the heroes' attacks. Setsuna pleads with Toya to stop being reckless and stick to their original plan, causing Toya to calm down and apologize. The heroes continue their attack, blinding Kelvin with a light fairy and restraining him with magic. But Kelvin uses his golems and parallel processing to free himself before defeating the hero party one by one. After the fight, Toya awakens and learns the truth about Kelvin's group. He formally apologizes to Kelvin, who accepts the apology but reminds Toya of their agreement. Kelvin then jokingly tells the heroes' party to strip, which causes them to freak out. Later, Kelvin, Mist, and a guild receptionist watch as the freed slaves leave on a wagon. Afterward, Mist asks Kelvin what he is going to do to the heroes' party, and Kelvin reveals that he's off to play a fun punishment game with them. Tinky. Later, the heroes of Daramis are seen struggling against a giant octopus in a cave. Kelvin observes and coaches them while Sira fishes nearby, and Ethel and Clotho prepare a picnic. Despite Kelvin's advice, the heroes have a hard time defeating the monster. Eventually, they manage to win, and the group sits down to enjoy the picnic. During the picnic, the priestess Colette is mentioned, and Toya explains how they were summoned by her with the help of Melfina. Kelvin then asks the heroes how they think they would fare against an S-class dungeon with their current strength, and Toya admits that they would have to run due to their lack of power. Kelvin notes that his actions could cause harm to the people he's sworn to protect, and Toya responds that they would train harder to become stronger. Impressed with Toya's answer, Kelvin tells him he passed his test before getting up to go to help Sira fight the boss monster of the cave, a sinister dragon. Later, Kelvin's group says goodbye to the heroes as they set sail to their next destination, and Kelvin gives them pendants as going-away presents. After they leave, Kelvin asks Gerard about the country of Lysia, which is revealed to be the country that destroyed Gerard's home country, Alcarl. Kelvin wonders if they could defeat Lysia in a fight, and Gerard confirms that they could, but Kelvin decides to stay where they are for now. Sira suddenly appears and tells Kelvin that they have been summoned to the castle to meet the queen. At the castle, the party meets with the queen of Toraj, Tsubaki Fujiwara, who thanks them for their help defeating the bandits. Tsubaki offers to reward them for their efforts, and Kelvin asks for the right to purchase rice. Tsubaki denies their request to purchase rice, instead giving them a lifetime supply and holding a banquet for them. Several days later, Tsubaki visits Kelvin, who has been staying in the castle, and Ethel serves them lunch. During lunch, Tsubaki tries to seduce Kelvin into staying in Toraj to take care of her, but he quickly declines, saying they should return to Parth, which upsets Tsubaki, but she allows them to use her teleportation gate to get home. Back in Parth, Kelvin purchases a house for the party, and hires 2 of the slaves he rescued, Luca and her mother Ellie, to be house servants. That night, Melfina appears in front of Kelvin in an avatar body, stating that he is now strong enough to summon her. Kelvin completes the summon spell, and when he sees her new form, he begins to blush, thinking he may be in love with her. Another one for the harem. Later, Melfina finally meets the party in person and gives Kelvin a blessing for being strong enough to summon her. The blessing has 2 effects. The first effect is to be able to avoid any fatal attacks once a month, and the second effect is the ability to summon heroes. Sira gets jealous seeing Melfina shamelessly flirt with Kelvin, so she suggests that her and Melfina have a friendly sparring match. While Melfina and Sira spar over who will marry Kelvin, Kelvin sits outside wondering if it would be okay to summon a hero from another world against their will, remembering how the heroes felt about being summoned for only their looks. Just then, Melfina joins Kelvin outside, and he asks her why heroes are important in this world. Melfina explains that the demon lords in this world have 2 skills. One skill can make anyone go insane, while the other skill makes the demon lord invincible. The heroes, however, are immune to these skills. Kelvin then explains why he is hesitant to summon a hero against their will, and Melfina suggests he revive a dead hero if it will make him feel better. That night, Kelvin decides to perform a reincarnation summoning and successfully summons a hero named Rio. Rio is grateful to Kelvin for summoning her, but they soon collapse from the effects of the summoning. Rio's backstory is revealed, and we see that in her previous life she was very sick and had died at a young age, never getting to live a good life. After they have recovered from the summoning, Rio and Kelvin talk, and Kelvin explains what his experience as a hero has been like, and Rio asks to join Kelvin's party. He accepts and suggests they see each other as step-siblings from different lands. What in the hillbilly hell is wrong with this guy? Rio happily agrees to the suggestion, but Kelvin is still unhappy because he doesn't like her name as it reminds him of Leo, so she suggests the name Rion instead. How original. That night, Kelvin wakes up to find Sira, Melfina, and Rion sleeping with him, and feels happy with the progress of his harem so far, but notes that it is still not big enough. The next day, Kelvin and his party go to the dark purple forest so he can train Luca and Ellie outside a dungeon using his experience sharing technique. Kelvin then tames a shadow wolf and gives it to Luca and Rion as their new pet. Just then, Erd's party arrives in the forest to do some training, but when Kelvin introduces his new party members, Erd's party becomes jealous seeing all the girls and runs away. Back in the city, Kelvin apologizes to Erd for flexing so hard on his party, but Erd laughs, telling him not to worry because they couldn't get girls anyway. Erd then suggests Kelvin take his S-rank exam since he has enough experience to pass. That night, Sira notices the mansion is surrounded by Kristoff's old teammates wanting revenge for what Kelvin and his party had done to their gang. Annoyed with their pitiful levels, Kelvin decides to send Rion to deal with them so he can see how much she has grown since joining their party. Meanwhile, at Trison Castle, Emperor Zell meets with his generals, who are arguing about whether or not they should go to war with the 3 neighboring kingdoms. Zem decides they will put the decision to a vote, but the vote ends in a draw, so Zem sends one of his guards to get his 5th general, Clive, to break the tie. When the guard arrives at the general's room, he is shocked to find Clive surrounded by unconscious women. Now that's an S-rank harem. Back in Parth, Kelvin receives a special quest from Leo as his promotion test. The quest is from Leonhard Gon, the king of Gon, asking Kelvin to defend an elven village from an S-ranked monster. Kelvin accepts and his party rushes to the Crest Forest southwest of Gon. While traveling, the group begins to discuss Trison's possible involvement in the attacks when suddenly they are attacked by elven archers. Kelvin tells them to stop as they were just there to help, and the village elder, Nellis, appears telling his archers to stand down. In the village, Nellis tells the story of Lumil, who calmed a fire dragon's rage and left with it, promising to become its bride. Lumil was found dead years later, and the elves then fled to Gon. Nellis continues and explains that the village is now threatened by monsters that kidnap the elves. Kelvin and his party agree to help the village, and Kelvin creates a stone barrier to protect it. That night, monsters from Trison attack the village, but Kelvin's party is ready, and they manage to take most of them out quickly. Meanwhile, Mel and Rion encounter a giant lord that was summoned by Trison's commander. Rion tries to take it down with a single triple sword attack to prove herself to Kelvin, but the giant regenerates and awakens its true form. This aggravates Rion because now she must use another triple strike to defeat the monster, and she thinks she has let Kelvin down. Back at the barrier, Kelvin and Ethel are confronted by General Clive, who wants Ethel to become his slave. Kelvin attacks Clive to protect Ethel and appraises him, realizing he is also from another world. Kelvin tells Ethel to retreat as he turns the tower into spears to attack Clive, but Clive stops them with his helix barrier and sends his guards to attack Kelvin. While he is distracted with Kelvin, Ethel manages to shoot a powerful magic arrow and break Clive's helix barrier from below. Kelvin then summons 4 golems to help him with the guards so he can focus on Clive. The battle continues until Clive manages to break Kelvin's staff. Thinking he has won, Clive begins to use his strongest spell to finish Kelvin off, but Kelvin pulls out his S-rank staff and manages to break through Clive's spell and cut off his legs. However, before Kelvin can finish him off, General Trison appears and teleports Clive to him before revealing himself as the true mastermind behind the attacks. The 2 generals then teleport away. Later, the elven village celebrates as Kelvin and his group meet the King of Gon, who congratulates him on passing his S-rank test and tells him about the S-rank promotion ceremony that includes a mock battle against other S-rank adventurers, which gets Kelvin excited. That is where the story ends. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next recap.